First thing we got is the approval of the agenda, and if you've noticed, we've got additions and deletions.
I'll make a motion to approve with the addition and the deletion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Cheney, second by Grant to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
And with that, do we have any citizens that call in?
No, Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay. Then we'll go on to our first of the month. We always have employee recognitions, and we got 2 employees today with 20 years. The first one we got Darren Schenk. Come on up here, Darren. Darren is 20 years with us. This presenting grateful recognition of 20 years of outstanding dedicated service to Clay County and citizens. Thank you so much, Darren, for your service. And Julie, you got a few words for him?
I do. This is an easy one. Darren's a great employee. County's very lucky to have him. For the last 2 years, he's become a sergeant for us, and it was a no-brainer because whenever Darren's working, we always know things are getting handled the right way and lets me get a good night's sleep at night. So it's nice having him around, and I know I appreciate him. I think all of his coworkers do too because he's very well liked by his staff.
Thank you for your
Darren.
service. And then, we've got Kathy McKay. For us, it seems like a long 20 years.
I'd say the last 4 months is like 20 years for her.
And maybe that's short for you.
This last 4 months was like 30 years.
Yeah.
Feel like it's been 50.
Good. Congratulations. Man.
Thank you.
You don't have to say anything, Steve.
Certainly tough to follow that. But no, we do think, I mean, when we think of Kathy, we think of an infectious energy, and we can hear her coming down the hall, and that kind of brings energy into that room that makes some of the challenging things that she faces and that we face together. So her leadership, of course, is second to none. It's what we've been dealing with in our pandemic. And also she's a leader in our region in dealing with all the other important public health issues that are going on. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we'll go into approval of minutes from August the 18th. Move approval.
Second.
We got a motion by Jim, second by Kevin to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Payment of the bills for this week. Got a motion by Kevin. Second by Jim to approve the bills and vouchers. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. With that, we'll go into our COVID update for the week with Kathy.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Jamie's here as well to provide some information. The first document, of course, as always, is our data. And so as you look at the number of cases across Clay County, as well as across the state of Minnesota, we have 880 now positive cases in Clay County, and 75,864 cases in Minnesota. The deaths in Clay County still remain at 40, so we're grateful for that. No new deaths. And then you see our 14-day case rate per 10,000 people is 7.32. And as you recall, that is a number that the K-12 schools are using, and they're just watching that. It's been under 10, so they do have the ability to do in-person if they choose to with all of their other measures, but it's 7.32, so it did decrease in a positive way since the last 14-day case rate. Minnesota has a 7-day positivity rate of 5.2%. Clay County, as we talked about last week or the week before, it's really hard to get a very accurate positivity rate because we're still not getting all of the test results from the North Dakota Public Health Lab. So our rate is probably around that same average is our best guess. The number of cases, and we've talked about this last week also on the second page, is going to change. So the confirmed cases of date testing, what we decided to do is change it to Wednesday, because if we see the numbers from the previous Wednesday, it gives a little bit more accurate number when it comes to giving you the results at the board meeting. So that 5 to 7 day or 3 to 5 day where they're waiting for test results had caused a lot of inaccuracies. So if we give you Wednesday, so you notice the dates have changed. So if we give you the Wednesday dates, it might be a bit more accurate for the test results. So that's why the changes. So from here on out, we'll hope to have a bit more accurate count.
So Kathy, on that, if I can understand, so the numbers, for example, on August 26th now, the numbers that you have, that would include all the tests that have results, but it would not include tests that have been performed, but we haven't. And that's why, going back to my question last week, then you update those numbers after the fact, because those previous tests now have results.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly.
That helps clarify that to me. I found it kind of amazing that we've had different,
Yeah.
going back, now next week you'll report back to us on August 26th, we'll have different numbers than today.
Correct, right. So that maybe will help where it's not
Yeah.
such a large fluctuation. You're right about that. And as you probably already know, that the federal government is concerned about the high level of community spread, both in Minnesota and in North Dakota. We're two of the states that are not decreasing. We've seen some increases. There's some reasons for that. We do know that when we had all of the higher ed students come back, we may see some increases. Now in our area, what we know is we have maybe 10 or 11 cases in our higher ed campuses right now. That may change, that may increase, but you hear about in Grand Forks, UND, large numbers of cases, especially with the fraternities, and there's large numbers of cases also at NDSU. So we're seeing the numbers with the students that are socializing and not wearing masks, not social distancing, which we really expected. We were hoping that there would be really an adherence to the measures of protecting each other, but it's college, and we expected that students would they want to socialize and they're away from home, so it's kind of an expectation. But Dr. Burks was here in Fargo, and she really is concerned about the high rate of growth, and of course a lot of it is in the metro area, but the Midwest is beginning to look a little bit different than the rest of the country. So her message again is we really have this individual responsibility to wear your mask, social distance, stay home when you're sick, stay home when you're waiting for your test results, avoid crowds. So it's really about our individual responsibility. What they've noticed in our businesses where there's masking required, we are not seeing so much of a spread. So it really is kind of the social. There's been a large number of spread with people that have had weddings, in funerals. You've heard about some outbreaks. And then Sturgis, they were watching that as well. So in Minnesota, there's been 49 cases identified with the Sturgis event, and there may be more, and of course that's just in Minnesota. We'll see probably a lot more across the other states as well. So you know, it's just to kind of remind people, it's so very important to do those simple measures. And I say simple, but that's all we have until we receive the COVID vaccine, is the masking, social distancing, stay home when you're ill. Any questions about that? And North Dakota is, of course, experiencing the same thing, as she talked about. North Dakota's in a similar case as Minnesota, where we're looking at the states that are seeing some case increases. So I'll let G. Oh,
Did,
go ahead.
you say Sturgis, Minnesota has 40 cases, something like that, 49?
49 cases.
49?
Mm-hmm.
Did North Dakota have anything, or South Dakota, do they have any records, or do you know? Any
I'm
records?
sure they do. I just don't have that information.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll let Jamie talk about some of the other items.
Okay, a few of the highlights from this past week. One being higher ed. Our case investigation staff have been working with higher ed. One of the things that they're doing is they're being very proactive, and they're having their students fill out a self-assessment for symptoms. And then they're doing kind of almost like a precautionary, you know, just can you stay home and remote, you know, for class. And so they're being very conservative until they're able to get tested and get those test results back. So I think that's helped a lot to get those numbers down. So troubleshooting with them is a lot of what we've been doing. So not technically are they quarantined, but they're kind of being excluded or asked to be excluded, just to be cautious while they wait for their test results to come back. So that's been a good thing. Then real important thing that came out just yesterday for our K-12 and our childcare is a COVID-19 decision tree. And so basically it'll help the schools to kind of sift out, like going into fall, and the common symptoms that they'll be dealing with. Instead of sending everyone home for quarantine, they're actually breaking things down to the less common symptoms and then the more common symptoms. So the more common symptoms, where they would quarantine or isolate them and recommend that they be tested, both students and staff and child care providers and the child care, are like a fever that is equal to or greater than 100.4, a new onset and or worsening cough, difficulty breathing, and new loss of taste or smell. So that's the more common symptoms. What they're doing is they're looking at whether they would be evaluating them remaining in school or in the child care center with the less common symptoms. That can be a sore throat, nausea and vomiting is what they see a lot. There's a lot of GI things. Just the general fatigue, onset of headaches, kinds of things. So nasal congestion is one, the runny nose, that they'll kind of look at those and watch the symptoms more rather than an automatic exclusion. So that will be a huge tool to help them decide whether there will be a lot of people that are quarantined or not. So just came out yesterday from the Minnesota Department of Health, and trying to sift through that, and we'll be supporting the schools as they work through that process as well. Let's see, so then I'll move on to restaurants and bars. Yesterday in the media update, the Commissioner Malcolm, Commissioner of Health, talked about that they've stepped up enforcement across the state of Minnesota for just basically doing some compliance checks. They said for the most part, people, the businesses are doing a great job. They do get some reports, but it's mostly the customers that are the non-compliant. And so they did do some spot checks. They're doing them randomly, but they're also following up on where they've had repeated complaints. There are very few, but the ones that they have had cases, outbreaks associated with have been repeat offenders. So that's something that they're doing to try to support the complaints they're getting from the community. She really did stress the fact that it is the customers that are the less compliant. Then long-term care, what came out this week too is CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid, has some new rules they've established for long-term care facilities. So they'll be focusing on testing requirements, and the guidance is very clear. It is also based on the frequency of the county positivity rate. And so they'll also be doing compliance with them as well. So their surveys will include that. But they will too be looking at a low, medium, or high frequency for testing of their residents and their staff. A low frequency would be a positivity rate in the community of less than 5%, and so they would have to test their staff and their residents monthly. And then a high rate would be greater than 10% positivity, and they would have to do 2 times a week testing. So 2 things they'll be looking at is what do they have for cases in their residents and their staff, but then also what is the positivity rate in the community. So again, clearer guidance for long-term care in terms of how frequently they need to be doing testing. So those were some highlights from this past week that came out. Any questions?
I have just a couple of short questions. So, if I can go back to this document here, and whether Jamie or Kathy, the one you want to answer. So, when I see the confirmed cases by date of testing, in August 19 it shows 823, and August 26 it's 866. Those are separate total amounts, am I correct? There's no carryover from the previous week in those numbers?
Those are total amounts.
Those are
correct.
total.
Total
Yeah.
number, so the week of August 26th, there were 866 confirmed cases
Correct.
Total.
total.
Yep.
Okay. Going to the deaths, I see that from the first confirmed death in Clay County was on April 15th, and so April 15th through May, it looks like we had, if you count June 3rd, there's 35 cases, or 35 deaths that occurred in that month and a half time frame. And now for the last 3 months, we've had 5. So, I mean, that's showing, that's some encouraging news there, and I'm curious, is that because we got a handle on the cognitive care facilities? Is that where you're thinking most of that is?
Right, the majority of that was.
Are you seeing anything in terms of therapy that's helping in that regard?
The long-term care deaths, initially when we started, were really
It
the
was a
hot
real big
spots.
spike, yeah.
Really large spikes. And so as they got a handle on that, and they did come in and do testing eventually for those long-term care, and they ramped up their protocols as well. So that was the majority where we were seeing large numbers.
And it was primarily our long-term care. At that time, we had a shortage of PPE,
Yep.
and testing was not readily available.
Wow.
So that's when we started working with the Fargo Moorhead Task Force to try to help our long-term care with testing as well. So things are in much better shape now than they are for both of those 2 things.
Yeah. 40 is a lot,
Right,
but I
it
just,
is.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhat encouraging, though, to see that number dropping the last 3 months compared to the.
Absolutely.
Kathy, I have a question on
Yes.
the likely exposure. With us being a border city, it's difficult to maybe pinpoint that. So you have 17% of the positive cases have been because of travel outside of Minnesota. But obviously you have, community spread, 15 and 19%. There's no possible way to say if that's North Dakota community spread, or is there?
Right. They're saying that's community spread of the cases from Minnesota, but yes, whether they went across the border, they're
Okay.
not distinguishing that, so.
I got one question too. Kathy, back to what Commissioner Campbell was saying about August 26 data, 866 confirmed cases. Again, how can we never see the amount of numbers of tested people that day to compare the two and the percentage of that every day? Those are 2 vital figures that have always been missing in this, and I don't know why.
Yeah, and we've worked really diligently on trying to get the number of testing, because again, all of our testing, the majority is done on the North Dakota side. That's where people are getting
I
tested.
don't mean locally here, I mean in the state of Minnesota.
Oh, in the state of Minnesota?
Yes, that's correct.
Total number of cases?
Number of people tested per day, and they're giving us the number of people that have tested positive, but we're not seeing the number of total tested people in Minnesota that day where that figure comes up. So we
Yeah.
don't know what the
It
actual
had-
percentage of
on
reinfection
the
Yep,
is.
on the second page.
Yeah, on the second page, there's total number of tested.
On 8/23, number of completed tests,
Yep.
were 287, but the number of completed tests from the external laboratories were 12,009.
Commissioner
So it gives
Hamey,
you
that's
the-
on this individual page on the front.
I'm on last week's, I'm sorry.
So we have total number of completed tests, that 1,489,000. And
No,
total,
number of tests completed that day, when that 866 figure comes up. How do we compare those two?
It's on this sheet.
yeah, and we have the total number of completed tests on 8/30 for 11,346. On this other sheet, this was more of the confirmed cases of
Do
testing.
we have that here?
Yeah, in this
The
first,
one that has Minnesota COVID-19
first
case.
page on the, right under the blue
Okay.
column.
On top. Your second dark line. Is that what you're looking for? The second line?
There we go, yep. Yeah, that says on the 30th, but the figure with the 866 that I was referring to is the August 26th date, and I can't look at that and see what that percentage is.
Yeah, the 830 is actual completed tests, and that is across the state in Minnesota, and these are cases in Clay County, the 866.
Okay.
And then that's the completed, confirmed
Okay.
cases of
So
test.
the daily case for the 830 is what I'm looking for, I guess.
I think you just got weekly figures there, don't you? Or-
Yeah, you're looking for, so the 830 number of completed tests, that is across the state of Minnesota.
Yes.
And are you looking for,
How many people were found to have the COVID-19 virus and tested positive on that date compared to the 11,000 that were tested total?
yeah, and so we have the number of positive cases in Minnesota of 75,864, and the new cases of 679, but you're looking for a specific, how many tests were positive as of August 26th versus the total number of completed tests on 8/30, is that correct?
The daily number of people that are tested, or I'm sorry, the daily number of people that are found positive with the COVID-19 versus the number of total tests that day gives us a percentage of how virulent the virus is at that point in time. Okay, how many people are being infected? And has that percentage gone up? No, it has not. Has it gone down consistently since June? But that should be the first stat that we see when we look at these figures. That tells us more than anything else, that and the confirmed fatality rate, which is
Yeah.
the number of people that are infected, or the number of people that are dead divided by the number of people that are found positive. That's the case fatality rate, right?
Right, the case fatality rate, and we're looking at the case total Minnesota positive cases, and that's the numbers that have gone up significantly.
By how much?
Well, if we look at last, I don't think I have last week's. I don't think I have last week's number, but the percentage of the positive cases that went up, I'm trying to find that, sorry.
I've got a note here from the media call yesterday. The Commissioner of Health said that it was 5.2% over the 7-day positivity rate was
Yeah.
5.2% on August 22nd for the state of Minnesota, and the prior week had been 4.9.
Okay,
So
so
that's
0.3% difference.
right.
Right.
Okay, but is that a trend?
Well, hopefully not.
No, but I mean, how do we know? That would be, I would think that would be the most important statistic to track on a daily basis. And that should lead all other statistics. Today it's 4.9, tomorrow it's 5.0, it's going up. But instead of saying it's up, by how much, you know?
Yeah.
How do we know?
And it'll be week to week. It won't be, we'll get the positivity rate every week, not
I understand the
daily.
numbers on the weekends are always dropped off. So that's why
Right.
the
Right.
graphs go down to nothing on the weekends.
Right.
Exactly.
So their concern is just that it's going up, and we hope not to get into a situation where some of the other states were, where they continued the incline of cases.
Okay.
I think kind of what Commissioner Haney is after is, so on August 26th, we've had a total of 866 confirmed cases
Correct.
from Clay County residents,
Correct.
right? But what we don't know is, to go along with that 866, how many Clay County residents were tested? I think that's.
That's
Right.
part of it,
That's,
yes,
that's,
thank you.
that's
Kevin.
part of the question, because when you get that, then you can get to these ratios,
Right.
percentages.
Right. We're
And-
making policy decisions whether to open schools or not, based on that, on those figures, and it's not evident. We have to dig hard to find
Yeah.
those.
Well, the schools are going by their, the rates that are on, we have it on that first page. The schools are going by the 14-day case rate per 10,000 people. So that's the rate they're looking at, and we're giving that to them every week. But because we cannot get all the testing, how many people were tested, we just can't get that. I've tried over and over and over to get all of the tests that were completed, and they don't get that at MDH either, because there's not a means, or the North Dakota Public Health Lab, to get those results. So unfortunately, we don't have an accurate number, which makes you, it's not an exact science then.
Yeah.
It's a less than
Kinda
accurate
It's kind
number.
of really unfair to Clay County, being a border
Yeah.
community, because you can get those if you're in Hennepin County.
Correct,
And you
correct,
can-
because they're
you can
getting
probably
done
get 'em
within
in-
this.
In Otter Tail County.
Yes, yes. But
you
because
can't-
so many of
You
our.
can't get them in Clay County.
Yeah, so many of our citizens are being tested across the river, and we've.
We don't know how many.
We've tried over and over and over through the task force to get the number from the public health lab, and they just don't have a means to give us those exact numbers, so it's very difficult to get a positivity rate for our county. So we do the best we can with the ones that are tested, but it's again, not an exact science for us.
And that's the one thing that Kathy keeps saying too, that even though our positivity rate is higher in Clay County, she's confident that it's not as high as that it looks like, because of the negative tests that are on the North Dakota side that we're not getting the results for.
I understand the frustration. It's frustrating not to get all the information, and we feel the same way.
I
We keep-
understand we have a higher case fatality rate here, and probably because of the large number of nursing home people that we have in Clay County.
Long-term care
Correct.
providers,
And
yep, assisted living.
Almost all of the people, unfortunately, that have passed away have been residents of nursing homes.
Right, exactly.
So,
Yep.
And it's nice to see so far that our higher ed is much lower, as Jamie mentioned, than some of the other areas we're seeing. So we're hoping that's not a continual trend, but yeah, I understand the frustration. It's frustrating that we don't get all of that. Any other questions?
Okay. You're done with your stuff then? Okay, let's go into your addition to the agenda, which was allocation request for community resilience based on CARES plan. You want to go into that?
Yes, and hopefully, did you receive the breakout of some of the items for, that we are requesting through the CARES Act funding, some of the public health needs. Now, we've divided it out into various areas. As we know, we're going to get the vaccine, and so we have to have the pharmaceutical grade refrigerators to keep that vaccine appropriately temped. We also will have the influenza vaccine as well, so we've requested the additional things in the public health clinic that we will need to keep that vaccine for when we either do a mass dispensing event of some sort. And so we're looking also at that under emergency preparedness. We're looking at the various items for mass dispensing. That is something that the state has requested that we plan for. We also believe that there will be the COVID vaccine through the healthcare systems as well, but we anticipate that we'll have large numbers that we need to vaccinate in our community. So we're asking for all the equipment that may including a drive-through tent, et cetera, which might be an ability to get a lot more people vaccinated if we can do a drive-through vaccination process. So all of those supplies under emergency preparedness are for just that, preparing for that mass dispensing. We also, under the mass immunizations, we'll have the additional things like the gloves, hand sanitizer, wipes, et cetera, to provide that mass testing for the population. Stop me if I'm going too fast. I'm not going through each line item, but if you'd like me to, I could.
Hey, those vaccines, how long do they last? I mean, you keep them in refrigeration and stuff like that. How long does a vaccine last?
They all have an expiration date on them. I don't know exactly how long each one is, but they have an expiration date. And what we do is we work with the state and then other local providers to move them. If it's moving slower for us, then we move it to a local provider who uses the MinVac and the uninsured vaccine from CDC. So we keep it moving so we don't let it outdate.
Okay.
It's probably, we're anticipating similar to our influenza vaccine. We're anticipating probably the same, which is a pretty long refrigeration life.
Okay.
We also are anticipating that the vaccine for COVID will be a 2-dose is what they're anticipating. So an initial dose and then a booster dose. So that's kind of the plan at this point. So maybe a 2-dose. There's nothing firm, but that's just kind of the anticipation. So get your influenza shot, and then you'll be ready to get your coronavirus shot whenever that becomes available.
You wouldn't have any information how far apart they would be, would they? I mean, you say a 2-dose, you don't take both doses at the same time, do you?
Correct.
I believe it's 30 days.
Pardon?
I believe it's 30 days, but I'm not positive about that. I'll find out.
Okay.
Typically, it's a 30-day spread for a booster dose of any type. Sometimes it's a 60-day spread, so we'll find more information out about that.
Okay.
And our detox has, of course, quite some high needs because of the inability to social distance, difficulty keeping masks on clients that come in. All the staff are wearing masks, but and we've talked about this before, the facility isn't conducive to being able to keep people separated. But we have a number of needs in there that we've, because of COVID, that we put down short of, moving out of that space or a remodel. So some of these are just the ability to work with clients through this pandemic, where we included a fridge, nightstands, portable blood pressure machine so we can go around and take blood pressures versus having them all come into the nurse's station, and then some individual care items. And then we also have possibility to get a transport vehicle. We do not have one. We have in the past asked the Juvenile Detention Center to be able to utilize that, but sometimes there's clients that can't take the bus, they can't take a cab, and they aren't it's not a qualified FM ambulance ride. So if we can find a vehicle that is not too expensive, that we could provide transportation for some of these clients, so many are homeless as well, we have that in our request. And then, of course, we do a lot of mailings under Healthy Communities, Healthy Behaviors. With WIC, our family health program, we're not seeing people face-to-face, so there's a lot more virtual work. We also have a baby scale we've talked about with the nurses. So if somebody is in really high need of weighing a baby for failure to thrive, we need to keep a scale in someone's home for a period of time since we can't go in and out. So we would like an extra baby scale, and if we need another one, we can do that as well, to ensure that we can get accurate weights. The parents can weigh the babies and then report back to us. So we have a number of needs there as well. We also will be doing outdoor visits with some of our families, because we really want to have eyes on the family and on the baby. So we've got some equipment for outdoor visits when we can, before the snow flies, so we can see some of those families directly in person. And then some of the other expenses just more costs with, because we're remote, with mailings and some of our travel expenses and postage. So our grand total was that $339,261 out of the CARES funding for our public health needs at this time. So because I didn't go through the details, do you have questions about some of those items? So-
Mr. Chair, I think on behalf of our committee, in some ways, we apologize for having $339,000 brought to you on a agenda addition item. We kind of went through, and these are numbers that our COVID committee agreed to just finally yesterday. And we felt it was extremely important to get it in now and to get approval from the board now. As we know and we've heard in past, when you get into necessity items, sometimes you have to wait. There can be back orders, and we don't want to have that problem here if we can help it. So that's kind of the reason why we brought this to you today rather than waiting until next week, because we want them to be able to start ordering these things ASAP to make sure that they're on hand when we need them. So, but this did get the recommendation from the full committee, these items. There's obviously many more from public health that we have put on a back burner right now to get more information on. But.
Well, I'd have to agree. I mean, we're talking about COVID-related funds, and this is COVID-related. I mean, this is where it all starts. Yeah, I mean, these are funds used for COVID. We wouldn't be doing this otherwise. So.
Correct.
So these are really necessary items for COVID. So.
And I would like to add later in our agenda, when Darren and Steve come up, we'll be giving you some graphical information that shows the 6 pods, what we originally put in each of them, and how much we've have approved spent to date. And I think we have something that shows what it will look like after today's approval. So I think you'll get a good idea of where we are in all of those categories, but in our later presentation.
Okay.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve today's recommendations from the public health pot of CARES dollars totaling the $339,261.
Second the motion.
Okay, we've got a motion by Kevin, second by Jenny to approve the funds for COVID-related public health. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, thank you, and we'll certainly let the county know when we will be starting influenza vaccines. We anticipate maybe earlier than last year, so September. So we'll be trying to get those out as soon as we get the vaccine in. So we'll alert you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for your 20 years of service.
Thank you for having me.
And I've only been here for 8 years.
Oh.
Okay, with that, we're going to Steve and Darren, continuing on with the CARES Act.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I do just want to, first of all, say how much we appreciate the effort of our committee, leadership of our commissioners, and it's an extremely busy time just with regular duties for a lot of our department heads and committee members who are on our group, and they continue to work very hard to bring you these different issues and work for the citizens here in the county. And so I just wanted to make sure that I brought that forward. We continue to meet over the last week since we last provided an update, both on the 27th and on the 31st. We've addressed a series of different categories as part of our CARES planning, many of which you're going to heard and are going to hear today. A lot of our focus has been on the business relief plan. We talked this past Tuesday I think some concern was shared by our commissioners about maybe the lack of interest and what things we could do to drum up interest as far as that and getting the word out. We did purchase an ad on Facebook, which was viewed over 3,500 times in the last week. We also reached out to West Central Initiative to see if there are any additional ways that we could get that information through them. One of the areas that they worked with us on is one of the areas that have been hard hit also is our licensed daycares. And so they reached out to all of our licensed daycares in Clay County on behalf of our committee to make sure that they had the information on our business relief program. Over the last 4 business days, we've probably seen the most significant jump in the number of applications that we've received to date. And I think with that, I'll turn it to Darren.
Yep. When I ran all of these numbers, I updated them a little bit yesterday as well. I broke these down into what kind of business legal structure they have. So, for instance, on your first page that I handed out, corporation totals $280,000, and that's giving those businesses that would get $10,000, and then sole proprietors giving $3,000. The total so far would be about $549,000. Now, I did check the applications this morning, and we're actually up to 83 applications. So I would say that 549,000 is probably closer to 600,000 now at this point. If you switch to the second page here, this is what we have been approved to spend so far. And then the top you see what was spent and projected to be spent, which has been approved by this board already. And then the next chart that you'll see, the last page there, is I added those things in that are being considered today with social services, public health, and some of those other ones. So that would be what the projections would look like if you approve everything after today's meeting. So that's kind of a wrap up of where we are with the applications. We're still continuing to take applications. We'll take them until Monday at midnight, I believe. We still have 2 teams working them, one county individual and one city individual looking at all the applications, and we've kind of split them between Mark and myself. And then Mandy Olson is also helping. And then we have 2 of the city representatives as well. Actually 3 now, I guess. 3 of the representatives.
Darren,
So-
remind me again what the unallocated, was it 200? We had that piece that was
I don't have
unallocated.
it with me, but it's like 238,000.
238, yeah, I thought it was 220 or something.
Something close to that.
And I would note, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, through this business plan, we've been working closely with the city of Moorhead. Their Moorhead Cares program did end last night at midnight. And so we'll be working with them as a committee to determine if the funds that they provided through their business plan were enough to cover their applications that have been approved. And if not, we do have funding or would have funding available for consideration to make sure that we provide that for all of our businesses in Clay County.
We are reviewing them as they come in. So we think that by next Monday, when our cutoff is, that we should have almost all of them reviewed by then and be having a pretty good number by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week with all the approved and not approved at that point. So.
And I think for our commissioners, and just a reminder, during this process, part of the partnership was utilizing working with the city of Moorhead, was utilizing their economic development and Derek LaPointe as part of this process. And in turn, the county will then be sending the checks out. And so that'll be the important piece of getting our 2 committees together to get that through so we can get those funds out to the citizens as quickly as possible.
I have a question for you. I notice you have 28 corporations located, or total there, and you granted $280,000 as $10,000 per, and this goes on down. Then we get down to sole proprietorships. We had 25 sole proprietorships total, and $69,000 was awarded to them. Is that $2,760 per sole proprietorship?
No, I put, if it was approved, it was 3,000.
It's
for-
3,000. So our
the sole
grant
proprietors.
application, we advertised that it would be up to $10,000, except for the sole proprietorship would be up to $3,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, remember, this is as it stands, so if the applications exceed the dollars allotted, then that 10,000 would shift down
Right.
so that everyone could receive the same amount. So
Okay.
if, as it stands right now, it's at 10, but
Right.
Any other questions?
just maybe a comment, if I may. Last week when we addressed the advertisement piece, I think we got, I think we had 54 maybe applications last Tuesday, and to be up at 83. I know that there's been significant networking that's been happening, and I appreciate that. I think that another social media ad with maybe a different cover, I mean, try to vary up what the cover to that looks like. Probably have the date of the application that's due on midnight on the 1st, or not the 1st, midnight next Monday. I think that to continue to reach out, we need to, because as I look at the applications, there are some areas, it's curious to me where there's places that maybe haven't applied, where, you know, just from the outside looking in, you know that there's been negative effects of COVID. The one glaring thing that it kind of has dawned on me, that there are no long-term care facilities that have applied. And I'm not sure why that is. If the questions are such, you know, that it disqualifies them, if there's so many care aides or CNAs on staff that it disqualifies them from the full-time employee status. You know, but from what we all know about COVID, the businesses affected for sure has been long-term care. So maybe that's something we need to bring back to the committee to just re-look at that.
Yep. It's a good point.
If some of
We
these,
have been-
oh, excuse me, in some of these areas, like the first one, corporation total 28. Now, if they put in for more than 10,000, we've got money left over, would they be qualified for that, or is 10,000 the most they can get?
Right now, I think we set the limit at 10,000.
It is, yep, up to.
Even though we may have
Up
money
to.
left over?
I guess that would be up to the
Well,
committee.
Mr. Chair, I think it's, for one thing, I think it's a little bit preliminary to talk about that, but in the event that there is money left over, you know, we have several options available to us. There's been some areas where they have been excluded from this because they, you know, we're trying to focus for now on those who are most impacted by it. Meaning, for example, whether you're a sole proprietor or a business, but you have a separate storefront than operating out of your home. So there could be some other things depending on, you know, there's been a little bit of discussion, would we do a round two? You know, that would have a little bit different criteria that could help more people. But we need to know and wait till September 7th.
I think we have to know what Moorhead has gotten as well.
Right,
Correct.
right. And we, like we said before, we want to see all of our county businesses, whether you're in Moorhead or outside of Moorhead, receive the same type of care benefit.
And the process is that, you know, once they apply, if we do have questions on that application, then we bring it back to the CARES Act Committee, which meets twice a day. It seems like twice a day.
It seems like twice
but but it's really twice a week. And then that application is discussed and then approved or disapproved at that point. We also have, of course, our own email that's on the website if people have questions of whether they qualify or not, and also a phone number that goes into a shared email box, which Mark Sloan has been pretty diligently of calling back people that have questions on this. So.
But I think it's important to note, Commissioner Gross, to your point, that this, you know, if there are additional funds left over, this is, you know, it's not stuff that we're going to hand back. It really needs to go back into the community, and that will be what our goal is, to make sure that it's all injected back into the community.
Okay.
questions?
I guess not,
Guess
unless you got more.
Thanks for doing this, though.
Okay.
That's very helpful.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for the update. Okay, and Steve, you're just gonna stay there, and we're gonna go on to the multi-purpose community room that we're planning, or possibly planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For you this morning, for your consideration is a proposal from our coronavirus committee, and it's the courthouse multipurpose community meeting room. I think that we know during the challenges that we've faced during this COVID pandemic, really has, a lot of it is focused around our ability to have operate county government through the social distancing requirements. And you don't have to go too far into the courthouse to be reminded of that. We have different marks on the floor to remind us where to stand to keep that 6-foot distance. And so we've had a variety of different challenges through the courthouse, whether it's been our courts, when we just had our primary voting, making sure that we had adequate space to have the number of kiosks that we needed. We have citizen advisory boards that utilize the space here, and our county board here has certainly had to alter how we do county business. And so now our committee kind of looked at those different things and to see if there's a better way in our current setup that we could provide better service to our citizens. We wanted to make sure also that we had the adequate technology within our infrastructure within that space to ensure that both our citizens and our county personnel have the ability to virtually participate, and not by putting a microphone to the phone like we'll see this morning as one example, but adequate ways to do that when they can attend in person. And so what the proposal today before you is looking at what we did is we looked throughout the campus, but the spot that stood out to us is just right across the hall here. We have meeting room A and B that has a mail room and also a couple offices up in the south corner that we would be looking at remodeling that space to utilize for this community meeting room. I think because of the time frames and the challenges that we had, we reached out to construction engineers to look at their ability to provide us an opinion of cost letter and any other subsequent changes that might come about by removing the offices and the mail rooms and adjustments. And so Mark Sloan and Tim Dent have also been working on the technology needs of that space. And so we have I guess a document here that breaks down the costs that we would be looking for. The construction engineer's opinion of cost of letter provides the base price of remodeling the space, meeting room A, B, the office space and the mail room of $250,000. There is the actual letter of what that does cover. Would be demo in the area, would be adjusting the ceilings and moving sprinkler heads and HVAC. It wouldn't include any new HVAC issues that we would have as a part of that, but just moving the ductwork. The electrical would also include the benefit of that space would be is that when it's not being used, we would have a partition much like you see at the law enforcement center that would be able to cut that space off, because that space is those meeting rooms are areas that are used on a daily basis by multiple parties. And so their expansion, or excuse me, their base bid also includes some of those additional changes that we've asked them to look at for social distancing in the technology department, moving a couple walls and then moving some doors and our mail room down to the south end of the HR area. And so if you take a look, you do have a map. You have the architect drawings that have been put together of both side A and side B. Side A gives you the existing layout of the third floor here of the courthouse. Again, we're looking at meeting rooms A, 305, 304, 304, 305, 306, and 307 are the areas that we would be looking at remodeling. And that second page, which is labeled side B, gives you the layout of that space. Now, one of the benefits that we looked at additional to this would be this would allow for in addition to the voting to our citizen board advisory boards, like our planning commission, for example, right now is held there. We've had to do it virtually. We don't have the ability to get that information out to our citizens other than tape recording. And this new space would allow for those citizen advisory groups to be televised if that was the direction the board wanted to go. The setup that you see within the desks there, those desks will be movable, and so in the event that space is needed, they will be able to be shifted to make that additional space. The social distancing aspect of that, each of those tables is 6 feet, and so our planning commission, for example, would be able to fit around that staggered in 6 feet adjustments. So we would be able to have the whole group there. In addition to that space, one of the areas that this meeting room B is our emergency operations center backup area. And obviously with the social distancing requirements of meeting room B, we wouldn't have adequate space to set up all the different partners that we would need to have in that area, and so this would allow for our emergency operations center to be able to adequately space in the event that we needed that area. The committee felt that this met the criteria based on the fact that of the criteria that we're working with, and so we brought this forward to you today. The total estimated price of the construction engineers would be $267,000. The proposed AV equipment that Mark and Tim have been working on would be they're working with a vendor for HD cameras, equipment, sound system. Would be $80,000, and then ensuring that, much like you see at our law enforcement center, to make sure participants would have the ability to see if they were in the back. We'll have additional televisions and mounts that will be mounted there, so everybody can see whatever's being displayed in that meeting. We have a little bit of work yet to do in the proposed furniture purchase. We have $83,000 set up there. Again, that would be the custom desks utilized for the meetings, and also tables and chairs for when the meeting is not set up in two separate areas. So, with that, I would bring you with a total of $450,000 that would come out of our infrastructure category. And with that, I would turn it over for any comments from our commissioners or any questions from you.
One of the things that Steve did not mention that's extremely important here is the time frame. We are under the gun. The CARES Act dollars right now, we've been told, the projects need to be spent and completed by December 1st. So as you can see, this will be quite a task, and that's why we're here today. To get this authorization to move forward on it now with the hopes that we can get this completed in that time frame. So we certainly think it qualifies for the dollars. So
They think they can get it done by December 1st?
Mr. Chair,
And my question then is, what happens if they don't?
right.
We lose that funding if it's not done?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Whalen, we've met with Ben Mattson and James Hand from Construction Engineers, and while they feel the window is closing, they felt that based on the information and the work that they've done in looking at this space, they feel like that they would be able to get it done within that time frame. In the event that we needed to look at outside of normal working hours, I would guess that would be something we could talk about as a committee and as a board if it came to that. But based on the information that they had, they felt comfortable. We may be limited on some of the things that you know, the finishes that may be available in this, in short of a period of time, but they felt they could get it done.
Commissioner Whalen, maybe if there's a little bit of potential comfort in that concern of yours, that it might not be done and some of those expenses wouldn't qualify. One of the areas we could look at is we are also going to be reimbursed as a county for a lot of COVID expenses that fell under our normal budget for 2020. So if in a worst case scenario, and we're looking at upwards of $1 million in those types of funds. So in a worst case scenario, we could always tap that resource if we need to, but we're hopeful that we wouldn't need to do that.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think one thing that's come out of COVID is what we don't know what the future's looking like, and from an elected official's perspective, I'm uncomfortable with the fact that citizens have not been able to, because of social distancing, actively take part, whether it be in person or virtually through meetings of government. And that's the Solid Waste Advisory Committee has had to go to the Law Enforcement Center or off campus to conduct their business, and the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. These are meetings, these hearings are important for citizen input, and to allow the citizens to continue to actively take part in that. This community meeting space is really important. Not only because it will be a flexible use area for meetings, it will also allow departments, if they need to have their meetings in areas where they haven't been able to conduct meetings in the past, that's important, but also to allow this room to be a courtroom where dollars from the state have already been invested in technology in this room, and to limit the presence of other people if just the courts are using this room or just the community meeting space across the room. I think it will be money well spent, which is always kind of an important piece for me, to make sure we're not investing dollars that 6 months later maybe doesn't make sense. This makes sense for the long term. It definitely has been brought up because of the COVID restrictions, and that's why I feel it qualifies.
I too would have to compliment the committee on this plan when working on the facility committee. When we looked at different ways that we can do things here, this was really take care of one of the items, another courtroom, take care of that and coming up with a good boardroom there. I think really want to compliment the committee coming up with this plan. It looks like a good plan.
Commissioner Whalen for quite some time has had the insight to see that there's going to come a time when we all know that this building will become a complete justice center, with the courts and as we grow. And I think this is in a way helping us to transition, in the short term, and still provide exactly what Commissioner Mojo said in terms of the public's ability to continue to be active in a pandemic situation. So this really makes sense to move forward with, I think so.
So I had one with the technology. There's going to be some upgrades with that, with the new boardroom and stuff. You're going to set it up like they did with the new Fargo City Hall, where you have everything on a screen in front of you that you can bring. I mean, as long as we're doing it, it seems like it would be timely to upgrade that now. So.
Well, we've definitely had conversations about that. Probably not fixed screens in the desk area because they will be movable, but we've talked about having some sort of laptop or whatever on the desk. So I've said when presentations are on the screen, I can't read that. So I think to be able to have that in front of you is important, but we've definitely discussed that and how to upgrade the technology piece.
I think the plan, Commissioner Whalen, is that we would all be able to have something closer to us like you do see in these other areas, and it'll all be done wirelessly. Yeah. So,
Okay, anything further on that?
That's all I have.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the plan.
Second that motion.
Okay, we got a motion by Grant, second by Jim, to approve the motion to do some repurposing for our boardroom and courtroom for a total project request of $450,000. Any further discussion?
And Mr. Chair and board members, just so you're aware, that is anticipated to come out of the county infrastructure column on the back page there, and that would be included in the $830,000 spent dollars. That would be on that back page. So
Okay?
you can see how that's flowing with the dollars.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
And that will go into a more CARES Act funding for community resilience allocation. Rhonda and Roy.
Good morning.
Morning, Rhonda.
The county has allocated $500,000 for the community resiliency bucket, one of the buckets Commissioner Campbell referred to earlier. And the focus of that bucket is to address community mental health needs as well as educational stability and support for students, teachers, and parents as a result of COVID. So Rhonda and I have been tasked with reaching out to partners in the community, organizations that might be able to help meet that focus, and soliciting proposals. And you have before you the proposals that the CARES Committee has recommended funding.
And I just want to make sure this was the document we're speaking from. It should have come out in your board packet.
Yes, we got that.
Does everyone have it? Okay. So we're good?
I don't have it, but I know what you're talking about. Okay, I get it. It's fine, I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So also just to preface, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 proposals listed there. We did receive some additional proposals that we are continuing to vet out. So thus the kind of note at the bottom indicating that some additional requests may be forthcoming once we work through the details of those additional proposals. But as Rory said, we reached out to our community providers, many of whom we believed have a pulse on what the needs of our community are in terms of mental health, as well as supporting teachers, students, and parents who are maneuvering this new time. We were very pleased with the responses that we got back. We had a number of virtual meetings with our providers, talking through their ideas, what they're recognizing and seeing both in their organizations and in the community. We had subsequent follow-up meetings pulling in various providers where we thought maybe there was some overlap or areas that they could partner together with. So we feel the proposals we're bringing forward today have had some good vetting and that the providers are ready to launch their proposals. What we've listed there is the first one is REACH, Rural Enrichment and Counseling Headquarters. They're located in Holly. And the county already has a relationship with REACH through social services contract. But this is, they're going to be expanding their support services to teachers through their proposal. So I won't go in detail all of the proposals, but we certainly can answer questions as we go. But again, REACH is looking for mental health support groups for educators in Holly and Barnesville, as well as working with the Holly School District to do 2 6-hour sessions with teachers on just focusing on the anxiety, the stress that they may be facing as school moves into these uncertain times.
Are there programs like that in the other schools too, or is Ollie the only one?
Well, some of the other proposals are going to address some of the other schools, so, yeah.
Very good.
I think
Excuse me
before
for,
Rhonda goes into this, this community resiliency bucket is really going to be a direct response to the concerns that we're hearing in the schools, in the community. It's the opportunity to strengthen agencies that are already doing hard and good work in our county.
Absolutely, yes.
And to submit a proposal, they really did need to have a finger on the pulse of what the needs were. They've got 3 months to make something happen, make what they've proposed happen. And, you know, the expectation conveyed was that there be some plan for how to continue that after the CARES funding was done. And so they needed to give some indication of that as well.
And I might add to that too, that all of these agencies or entities need to have a presence in Clay County.
Yep.
We made that clear, that if we're going to use CARES dollars, that it.
Yep. Yep, so maybe rather than going through all of them, as Rory said, we were very clear with our providers that the funds needed to be utilized within 3 months by December 1st, and their proposals needed to get running fairly quickly. As indicated, many of them, because of their involvement in the community and addressing community needs, they were ready to go. So Lakeland Mental Health Center, we're continuing to meet with them as well in terms of some additional ideas, but for now, they're going to be looking at some funds to help with telehealth, as well as supporting teachers and students as well, support groups addressing mental health, anxiety, and those areas. The Village Family Service Center, one of the concerns that they talked about is that in order for a family to go in and receive some traditional therapy, oftentimes there needs to be a diagnosis. They're looking at health insurance coverage. Their proposal is to really have an opportunity for individuals to come into the agency, don't need to have a diagnosis, come in, talk about what's going on, all the stressors, whether it be school or job related or financial related, and have an opportunity to do a free assessment that would then make referrals to appropriate longer-term services if that's determined to be needed. So we really liked that proposal as well. The whole idea is to reduce barriers to families calling and asking for help. A Place for Hope and Recovery. This is our social club here in Moorhead. So they're really, they've moved from a lot of in-person social club activities to trying to engage and outreach to their members who are at home and isolating and those kinds of things. They've also moved into distribution of food to address food insecurities, and so their proposal is to help them in terms of getting food to the people in our community that need it, both their members as well as other individuals in the community. Lutheran Social Services was quite unique as well. They're really looking at overnight or during the day respite services for kids 12 and under in our community that parents and kids are struggling. Whether they're at home with distance learning or whether they have existing mental health diagnoses or emotional issues, intended to support families who are struggling and prevent out-of-home placement. So they have services like this that are up and running in other communities in the state, so they felt that they would be ready to implement that fairly quickly.
And I may chime in here on this respite care. As someone who has 4 kids, minor kids at home, the COVID issue is stressful under the best of circumstances, and so this is going to allow families to seek a little bit of respite before something could happen that was bad. And so you deal with kids that are in horrific situations in other areas, and our hope is that that this pandemic doesn't push people over the edge, but we know that it may. And so I think this area will help to stem off some crises that could occur.
Yeah, absolutely. The New American Consortium and the Afro-American Development Association, both of those proposals, the New American Consortium will be focusing on in-person academic as well as emotional social support for students who have this hybrid model where maybe they go to school 2 days a week and then the latter 2 days are distance learning. So of those latter 2 days, one of the days they may be able to go to this in-person center supported by the New American Consortium to help with that distance learning, help with the academic support, help with the emotional and social issues that some of our families may be facing. We really liked this proposal as well. They're in the middle of identifying a location here in Moorhead. And again, the focus would be on our New American or immigrant families who oftentimes what we've heard loud and clear through this process is that although many parents may speak English, the reading and the writing is oftentimes not there. So their children are not necessarily getting the parental support that they may need because of that limited English proficiency or that difficulty in communication. So we really heard that this was a strong need for our New American or immigrant families. They need that in-person support in all kinds of areas, even beyond just academic school. So we really like that proposal, and the African American Development Association is very similar. They're going to be looking at both virtual as well as in-person support for our New American families, working in conjunction with the school and serving as that liaison to help with those students. In addition, they were really focusing on outreach to citizens that need communication about COVID, about all of the different information that comes out about recommendations for social distancing and where to get tested and all of the issues about school and that distance learning piece. So they're really going to work with us on making sure that we're getting to our New American population and information is very clear.
Rhonda, you gave us a stat on how many youth per week, and one of those was 100 youth a week.
Right. The New American Consortium was hoping to serve 25 kids per day for the in-person academic support and the emotional and mental health support. So that would be 100 unique kids. If they could achieve that, that would be 100 unique kids per week that they would be serving, which would then move on to the next weeks.
Okay. And then I think what's important to note as well is that we've had lots of conversations with the school districts on areas that they are ramping up support or where there may be gaps, and this will really go hand in hand to what this Moorhead School District this one specifically is Moorhead, but Moorhead School District is doing to help with education support, and so to allow 100 kids a week, that's a big number, and if that helps lift up the equitable learning to what the school is doing, it will be very beneficial.
Mm-hmm. And we have held virtual communications, pulling in the Moorhead School District, Carrie Yates, and making sure that the proposals that we're hearing obviously are partnering in line with what the school is seeing, and it's been very positive. And in fact, we just had another call yesterday with 3 of our providers again to make sure that all of our partners are understanding what each other is doing so that they can serve as referral sources and so that we don't duplicate what the needs are. So it's very, very positive.
How's this going to fit into, now we give all these funds, not all these funds, we give these additional funds to all these agencies. And now when that's a one-time thing. Now are they going to put on staff, or are they going to put on different hours, and then next year the funds are gone?
Right. Many of these proposals have some funding options beyond these funds. For example, the New American Consortium does have, I believe it's Otto Bremer funds that start at the end of November, or sometime in November. So they'll be using these funds to bridge that gap, and then and then they do have some funding beyond. So that was one of the things, as Rory said, when we talked to our providers, we did talk about that sustainability beyond December. Some of them have yet to vet that out, have some irons in the fire with how they could continue this level of service beyond. Some may have to reduce it, but they're very clear. I mean, again, these are needs that they've identified, not just for 3 months, but for ongoing. So all of these organizations are quite well established in our community and have good connections with foundations and funders, and so they see that as a primary effort to try to keep what they've started going.
Commissioner Gross, part of the reason why we're bringing this to you, and maybe I apologize for not having you been in the loop sooner, but our hope was that to strengthen whatever educational resources we could before these kiddos start, whether they're academic learning in person or hybrid or online. And so to have all of this in place before they start next week is going to be a heavy lift, but I think it's something that's really important. But also you ask about in the future, we just approved almost $400,000 for vaccinations, and our hope is that this is something that we're not going to have to deal with next September. If we are, we're all going to be in a far different mode. I'll be using this respite care for myself, but I think that's to go to your question. It's strengthening organizations that already have the staff in place to do a lot of this, but it's just expanding upon the services.
Well, I look at the building we're going to do next door here, and this building, this room here, and I look at the vaccinations. I mean, that's a one-time thing, you do it and it's done, This is not a one-time thing here.
Mr. Chair, if I can, on the attachment B at the very top, there's a statement, Clay County has allocated $500,000 in CARES Act funds under the community resiliency category. The focus of these funds is to address community mental health needs as well as the educational stability and support for parents, teachers, and students due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, I think all of these folks that we're talking about, and all these agencies need to understand that this is one-time money that's being allowed to help assist for the mental health crisis or the educational needs due to COVID. And we all got to keep in mind that that's the driving force behind all of these dollars, and they are one-time dollars. And so you're right. So if they want to see these things, as you mentioned, long-term, then they're going to have their own financial plan going forward to deal with them.
Yeah, and as you indicated, as we continue to move through the issues with COVID, as that resolves or we have an immunization, some of these needs will decrease. We're seeing these needs as a result of that. And so, for example, the teacher support group that REACH is proposing, those needs may dissipate or they may become more individualized that REACH can handle through their typical service system. Yeah. Good question, though. The last one is Solutions Behavioral Healthcare Professionals, and the big focus there is actually a virtual learning environment for students, teachers, and parents. And they have really worked with a lot of again, it's a bit in development, but we're really, it's an area that Rory has a significant interest in as well, and we're going to continue to work with them on that virtual learning environment, and they'll be working with the school and some of our community providers as well. But it's a host of opportunities where students can click into the student portal or the parent portal or the teacher portal, and it'll be all kinds of online learning environments, whether it be education as well as support types of virtual environments. Solutions is an established provider in our community and does a lot of work with the mental health support of teachers in the elementary schools as well as Head Start and their office-based services. And so we think they're in a good position to be able to offer this environment that'll be helpful for our citizens community-wide. I know, Rory, did you have anything else?
And we had found some models like this from around the country that I know folks in the school system were really, it was really beneficial. We found some from the Twin Cities. And when you talk about sustainability, we believe that this funding will help them build a backbone for a system that they'll be able to then continue after that. But there's some initial investment to help build the infrastructure to be able to continue to do that into the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, so those are our requests today. One particular area we're continuing to work on is some support and services to our seniors that are community-based seniors that may access some of the senior centers. So I'm working with CAP-LP and the senior coordinator to identify some of those issues and see if we might be able to partner them with some of these organizations or have an additional proposal to address those needs.
So if this is approved today, the 388, we do have almost we do have $500,000 allotted, so that will be a proposal brought to you later based on what needs areas we're able to identify. We talked a little bit about directing you to some veterans care issues if those are identified through the community. Early on, we talked about housing support, and Lakes and Prairies Community Action was able to secure almost $800,000 in a grant to do housing support in Clay County, and Wilkin County will get a small portion of that, but the majority of that will be in Clay County. And so that allowed us to shift our focus to some other areas of concern. But I also want it to be noted that those are dollars that will be used in the COVID crisis to help.
Yeah, we did push all of that housing information and the application process out on our website and social media. And it's getting out there in the community as well. But critically important, and it's going to be very valuable. And our partners will be referral sources for those funds for families experiencing that financial hardship.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve $388,766 CARES funding from the Community Resiliency Fund for issues incurred because of COVID-19.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Jenny, second by Kevin, to approve the funds for CARES Act for community resiliency. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you for your work on that. I know you made a lot of calls on this.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll go right into your next thing, funding for two technology infrastructure solution.
Okay. Hoping that got in the board packet as well. I think what you got is just a one-page document that talks about the two solutions that I was proposing for CARES funding. The first one being an e-signature solution. So maybe I'll just start by saying that over the past years, you have approved an electronic document management system for social services called CaseWorks. It's offered through a company called Next Chapter Technology. And we have that solution in our income maintenance unit as for both our financial services and our MNsure edition, and then we also have an edition for all of social services. In many counties throughout the state contract with Next Chapter Technology for this solution as well. So these two requests are working with Next Chapter, same company, for these two additional solutions to enhance what we already have. So the e-signature solution is a piece that they are deploying rather quickly because with the pandemic, they certainly have seen the need by our county as well as many counties about the need for electronic signatures on our required documents that go out to our applicants. And so I'm very excited about this because we mail out, just in one little section of our financial unit, they mail out probably about 50 consents for release of information a day. So somebody comes in or sends through the mail an application for maybe SNAP or healthcare or a cash grant, and we need to verify certain things. So we send them a release and ask them to sign it and mail it back to us. Well, when you think about how cumbersome that is, we're paying for mailing, we're sending it out, gets to the client, they sign it, they have to pay for postage to mail it back. And on one application, we might have multiple releases. So then we send it to the provider. So this will allow us to electronically, through Caseworks, send the release to the applicant. They do not have to download a signature solution or anything. They get it, open it, sign it, and electronically send it back to us.
So how do they sign it?
Well, it's through this system. Have you ever seen a document from like DocuSign is a similar, this is the application that they're gonna use is called Sign Now. So it's similar to like DocuSign, and so it's via
We're saying that
this-
they have the computer and they have the capability
Yeah.
to do it.
It can be done via a smartphone or a laptop or just a regular PC. So they would get an email from our office. It would have our logo on it, notifying them that there's a document to be signed by us. And they just click on it and sign it, and it comes
You
back.
probably picked up right away, they don't have much knowledge in this stuff. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think you can probably look at it being similar to filing your income taxes, e-filing. When you do that at the end, you're basically saying that this is all truthful information and it basically counts as your signature. So
Yep.
I think that's what we're talking about here
Yep.
is
Yep,
something similar to that.
Yeah, exactly, and it's sent securely via this third-party vendor, which is Sign Now. And the nice thing about this is that we do not get charged for the transaction unless the applicant opens it, signs it, and sends it back. Then we get charged $1.25 for that whole transaction. So what Caseworks is proposing is that counties purchase, so many transactions to be used over time. And that's what they're piloting right now during this COVID-19 pandemic to see how it works for counties. So my proposal was to purchase up to $15,000 of transactions to be used in our department. They're looking for a deployment of this by mid-October. They're starting with our financial unit, and we have more than enough forms that go out from that unit alone. And I think it will save us money in terms of mailing, but more importantly, it will allow us to expedite applications and not have to wait for releases to come back. I think it will just be a very nice process for our applicants who are in financial hardship in critical times and need those applications processed as soon as possible. So that is the first piece I was requesting CARES funding for. And I could go on to the second one. The second one is just like we have a financial edition, a MNsure edition, and a social service edition, now we'd like to purchase an accounting Caseworks edition. And we've had a demo with the auditor's office and Next Chapter in terms of the functionality of the edition, and we really feel that it's going to help us in terms of all of the flow of paperwork and the processing of our administrative vouchers that has become evident through COVID-19 as well and remote work. Next Chapter is working with 6 counties. Clay would be one of those 6 to deploy this as a group so as to reduce some of the service costs. So it'd be, the counties involved in this would be Becker, Polk, Brown, Isanti, Roseau County, and then Clay County. And I believe right now, all of those counties, except for maybe Brown, but we host on our server here through IT already. So we already have that relationship of working with many of these counties together with Next Chapter for these additions to help us do our work a bit better in terms of document management. The nice thing about this edition is that it's not just storing documents. It has a workflow functionality. It has doc boxes, and we don't have to send over interoffice mail from our office to accounting forms. We can electronically send them into doc boxes, and auditors can work on them and send them back to us electronically if there's a problem and there's an authorization process. It doesn't change IFS as the primary system, if I'm saying that right, and Lori could jump in. This will interface with IFS. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to launch this edition. They have only launched this in one other county, and that is Ottertail County. So this is, again, they're kind of, they'll be working with our 6 counties on our whole document flow and our business process as we deploy this in the next few months if you approve this solution. So I'm very excited about it. I don't know if Lori had anything to add, but we did receive a demo, and we all concurred that we felt it had a lot of functionality that would help. The cost is all of the initial licenses and the services of Next Chapter, in addition to 2021's maintenance agreement. So then for 2022, that would be a budget item that I would have to budget in my social service budget. Or I suppose it could come out of Lori's, but I don't know. Probably would come out of mine. For going forward. But we have those maintenance agreement pieces with the other solutions as well.
But the piece you talked about for 2022, that would, the cost that you'd have could be offset by time value savings.
Yes, yes. Oh, absolutely. And we'll be able to claim some federal financial participation on that maintenance agreement as well.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, just to follow up Commissioner Campbell's comments, the 95,000 wouldn't be the reoccurring dollar figure, correct?
Correct. The reoccurring, so I'll give you an example, and although this is not exact because it would change a little bit for us, but I would anticipate what we'd have to budget for 2022 would be around $13,000 for the maintenance agreement for calendar year 2022, and that would continue to go forward. So this 95,888 represents, boy, the print is small, about 80,000 of all the initial licenses that we need, some of the equipment that we need, which may be a little less because I need to confirm with Tim, we may have some of the scanners that we already need. And then all of the work with Next Chapter technology in terms of going through all of our business process flow and setup. So that'd be about 80,000, and then about 17,700 for 2021's maintenance agreement, which we would pay in December of this year for the next year, which isn't uncommon. I oftentimes get those in the month of December, so we would be okay, I think.
Mr. Chair, I think these are good opportunities for us. When it comes to software, the only thing that comes to my mind at some point in time is that we've researched that it's a pretty good deal. I can think of the nightmare that happened when the DMV switched their software and what that created, and we just want to make sure that we're not getting into something like that, and so hopefully there's a confidence level that you have in that regard. And then I would like to comment too that Lori did mention us today that she's she's looking at something similar that might even be able to help in her department that can probably be a time-saving factor, and document storage system that is probably long past due in her area as well, so, but I think this is good, but just so that we have confidence in the software.
Yeah, I think, and again, Tim Dent and Rory with the IT were on the demo as well. Rory has worked very closely with Next Chapter Technology and their casework solutions, and I don't want to speak for them, but they certainly felt confident with this company and the solutions that they're putting forward.
Well, once again, this was recommended by the CARES committee to move forward with the CARES dollars, and I would move we approve the 2 items.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Kevin, second by Grant, to approve the funds for infrastructure requests. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Rhonda, I want to thank you for the excellent information you've given us to make a decision on this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your knowledge on that. Okay, you want to take a break now? Are you okay yet? Or can we do budget? That one will take an hour or two, wouldn't it?
I hope not.
Okay, let's go for budget.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, a number of weeks ago we came, Lori and I came to you after compiling and having our department heads present their budgets to you with an unadjusted summary of looking at the 2021 tax levy. And after new construction, we looked at, with a new construction adjustment of 1.28%, we had a net levy proposal of 10.34%. Which you quickly asked us to go back and do some additional work on, and so we've looked the budget over, went back to our department heads, asked them to make any tweaks or adjustments that they could to there, and they made a number of adjustments to that. But one of the things I guess I want to talk about first is within your packet that you have this document here. And that is our half-cent sales tax information. We generally try to provide you this at various times during the year, at the beginning of the year or during our budget cycle. It's been increasingly important during the COVID pandemic just to ensure that we are meeting what our expectations were. And so in the fourth line, 2019-2020, you'll see the breakdowns of all of the allocations that we have received through August. I would note that Lori receives 2 checks per month. The first one is the larger of the 2, but Lori has not received her second August payment yet. And so if you go way over to the far right column, you'll see the highlighted blue area. It's the 2020 versus the 2019. And as you can see, every month we've received additional, a higher dollar amount in sales tax funds than we did for that month the previous year. I would also just like to point out in June, that's not a typo, it's $339,611.40. In addition to our sales tax for that month, there was an audit that was completed where they went back to all the businesses, not necessarily just in Clay County, but also our online partners. And as part of that audit, there was additional funding that was provided in the June category. And so we start out with that just to show the board that we're in a good spot from sales tax collection. We're actually in a better spot than we were the years before. And if you recall, some of our conversations on the sales taxes is that we were able to make some adjustments in our budgets based on the fact that we weren't needing to use so many levy dollars to make the payment on the law enforcement center and correctional facility bond. So, is there any questions at all on the sales tax piece?
Thank you for compiling this.
Yeah, that's good news in that part.
All right, we'll go into, we also updated then the summary of the 2021 tax levy fund. Again, just kind of jumping down to the bottom, we made a number of adjustments, which I'll go through here shortly, that got our net levy increase proposed down to 4.99%. In doing that, Lori and I looked at the budget. We removed from the building fund line item proposed in 2021. We removed the $400,000 from that item, leaving $50,000, which goes to Joe's budget for projects on campus. And again, that was made possible because we were able to have the sales tax figures that we do. We also would be reallocating $150,000 from our wind tax that we had allocated towards the law enforcement correctional facility towards the budget. We received an MCIT dividend of $157,348 this year that we would be looking, and we also adjusted the debt maturity from 100% to 75%, which that would be a savings to the county of $234,000. And I don't know, Lori, you want to touch on that? Anything there?
As part of our original jail funding scheme, we included 75% of all the defeased debt ongoing. And a few years back, we started putting in 100% because we were able to do that. And so that's what I initially had put into the budget for this year was the 100%. So if we reduce it down to the 75%, we'll be back in the original budget, plus that'll save us the $234,000.
And the last item is looking at reserves. Now, this board has been very vocal over the last 4 or 5 budget cycles about being ensured not to become dependent on the utilization of reserves. But if you recall, earlier this year we did provide an update on our fund balances from 2019, and through a series of issues, additional revenues that were unexpected. We had some interest that came due on some bonds, and also, if you recall, last year our board put a hiring freeze on from October through the end of the year. So we ended up having fund balance increases of roughly 1.4 million. And so part of the recommendation before you this morning would be to utilize roughly 1.2 of that county reserve from our fund balance to utilize towards the 2020 budget.
The one area that I struggle with in this is that 1.2 million. It falls below the 41 million instead above it. And the reason I say that is because next year then, we always base our tax levy information based on the previous year's budget. We don't account for any actuality afterwards. And so even though that we're being able to bring the net tax levy down, we're still then going to be, when we start talking about the 2022 budget, we're going to be using the $41,057 as our starting point in comparison.
Excuse me, actually, no, that's not how it works. So when what happens is, once you approve this budget, then I will work that 1.2 million into that number.
Okay, so it'll go into those top line. Okay,
yes.
That's
Yep.
As long as that happens, then right. So we will be comparing then the 41,057,000 will become $1.2 million less.
Correct.
Okay, then if that happens, this sheet doesn't show that happening.
No, it doesn't, and that's just because we haven't broken out that 1.2 into individual funds, if you want to do general fund or whatever.
Right. So that,
but it definitely will next year show that.
Comforts me that that's done then, because then we're comparing a little bit, we're still not comparing to actual, but it's helping.
Correct, yeah. So.
Then we can, in the 2022 budget, when they're working on that, then they can be looking at were their revenues over expenditures for 2021.
Right.
And that board at that time can make that determination.
Right.
Thank you, Lori, that helps me.
If Kevin feels good about the budget, then I do too, so.
Well, I wouldn't say I feel good about it, but
You're comfortable.
it's, I'll tell you what, 4.99% is way better than 10.
No, I really thank you for your knowledge in the budget. I'm not trying to be sarcastic here.
That's right.
Very good.
And we did, just to kind of note, that we had some significant increases as far as MCIT, our insurance rates for next year went up about 23%. We also saw significant increases in our workman's comp. And we're working through health insurance, but that certainly impacts our budget also. So we're, with any further direction, we would certainly take from the board. Otherwise, our goal will be to bring this for certification on September 2nd. If there are any other
That's
areas,
tomorrow.
September 22nd. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the board for any additional questions or comments.
Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification on the road and bridge funding. Where were we putting that 500,000 again?
I asked the same question.
So we had a conversation, Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner and Lori yesterday, and talked with Dave. There's some additional infrastructure needs that they had. They're spending some additional dollars on gravel. Some of the concerns that we've heard from our citizens is that the gravel roads have needed some additional work, and so there's a considerable amount of funds that are going there. Those were the main.
And we also increased our internal service fund contribution by $100,000.
I think, not to criticize it, if I receive concerns and complaints, it's road-based, so I appreciate that we're being reactive to the concerns of citizens. I just needed my mind refreshed.
I have some light reading to do now in the next 2 weeks.
We'll be looking forward for your explanation next week.
Yeah, right.
No, I really want to thank Lori for
Yeah.
the expert work you do on this stuff here and for understanding that. It's just great to have you on staff. Okay, so do we have any motion to make here?
No, just as informational, and if there's any additional insight you wanted to provide now, or we can certainly take that at future board meetings.
If you can get it down to Cyril, it'll be fine.
Well,
We'll do our best.
When he asked me, I told him under 5, and you see where it came in at?
Yeah, I noticed that it came
Yeah.
out.
Coincidentally,
Yeah.
I think my response is I wouldn't support anything over 5.
Yeah.
So he came in at 4.99.
Yeah.
It's a gotcha one.
We actually
We
had it
should've
at
said
4.84, but then we got our increase from MCIT for our insurances, so.
So we were lower than
Yeah.
just one 1/10%.
No, thank you very much again, Lori, for your work on
Yeah,
that.
good work.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a short break here for 5 minutes. And next thing is on Joe Olson requesting the purchase of a Bobcat for his own personal use.
Yeah.
Okay, good morning. What I'm requesting today is basically it's to do an upgrade of our tractor situation, what we have going on right now. Last time we upgraded this was in 2016, and currently we have a John Deere smaller tractor, and we're coming to find out, we ran with it last year with, last year was the first year where we had our full campus, and we ran with it. We felt like we were just a little undersized, so warranty is starting to come up on it too, so we feel it's a good time to upgrade with that as well. So what we're proposing to upgrade to is a Bobcat small articulator loader, and this would give us the ability to, with a quick attach, to have less downtime. That was an issue before with, we'd have, we go out and snow blow and then we come back and have to drop that attachment. And there was just a lot of downtime there. So this has a quick attach feature that we really felt is important to us. But anyways, we went up and what we did is we got 2 quotes from Swanson's Equipment, at $29,562, and then Bobcat of Grand Forks came in at $30,359. We went with the attachments separately because we got a better price through the attachment company themselves. So Quick Attach quote came in at $9,369.56, and then Erskine Attachments came in at $9,300. So like I say, this is our most used equipment, and we would be proposing to move forward with Swanson's equipment. They're going to take our current unit in as a trade-in for $11,000. So we bought that for about $16,000 in 2016. So we feel that's a real good trade-in. So total cost to go with Swanson equipment in Erskine would be $27,862.63, and this is budgeted out of the Maintenance Internal Services Fund. So, questions or?
How many attachments are you getting, I mean, for that?
Say that again?
How many attachments are?
Oh, yeah, with the attachments, we're buying the broom and the snow blower with this too. So it comes with the bucket on that end too, on the unit price, so that they're giving us that. The other thing is too, is these are state bid prices too, so we saved about $8,000 roughly on that part of it too, so.
Move to approve the request.
Second.
Got a motion of Grant, second by Jim, to approve the request to purchase the Bobcat for $27,862.63. Any further discussion?
Hey, just a question, is this going to help be able to reduce what we're looking for contracting snow removal services?
I wouldn't say as far as like with key contracting, no. It allows us, basically we do the sidewalks and all the little areas that they can't get their piece of equipment in. But so it won't reduce that portion of it, but the major reason for the upgrade is we just felt we were undersized. Okay. And this is just upgrading to the next with the campus increase, so, but, yep. So.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Go get her.
Thank you. I was going to mention too that we are going to be able to use this a lot on the grounds in the summer too. This is going to allow us to do that more too. Just, anyways, we're gaining that as well. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next thing we've got Kirk Rosenberger going to amend the contract with Burns and McDowell Engineering Company.
Trash guy is here today again.
Trash guy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, before we get started, I wanted to let you know about one other thing that's pretty significant. All the work has been completed on the Cell 1 construction, and the only thing that has to be done is it has to be certified by the PCA that everything is done accordingly. So what's going to happen is hopefully by the end of the week we can start putting garbage on that particular cell, so that's pretty good news. And the main reason it's really good news is right now we're getting quite a bit of leachate runoff from that particular cell, and once we get some garbage on there, then we'll be able to soak that up, and it should make it a lot better. So that's good news. I'm coming before you today for a couple items. The first item, and both of these have been taken to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and they both have been approved by them as well. The first item is a final cover for the design for the landfill. One of the things that we have had going on for a considerable period of time is we've had some stormwater issues out there. And so what we're going to be planning to do is we're going to try and relocate the road and put some berms in there to try and have a better flow of the stormwater. And so I think that will take care of the problem. I'm thinking that most of the folks that have been out there, I know Grant has looked at it and he's seen it. And as I mentioned, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee also approved of it as well. So that's the first item that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'd like to have that approved. The contract amendment for that would be a total of about $28,717. The second item that I'm coming to you about, it's a chronic problem for us out there. Safety is really, really pretty critical to us, so we don't let anybody up on the working face except for Packer trucks, transfer trailers, rear-end dumpsters, and things like that. The private folks are using a drop-off facility down below. And essentially, a drop-off facility is our 2 4 cubic yard dumpsters. And what we hope to do with this is actually have another drop-off site for the citizens away from the traffic. It's going to be more convenient, and it will serve our needs and their needs a whole lot better. And the cost of the design for the design work is going to be $32,946. So that's basically what I come before you with. Stand ready to answer any questions that you may have.
This is the second part is the plan that we talked about when we were out there, right, about moving that road further to the north. That's what you, Kevin, had suggested.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner, that's exactly right.
Yeah, the one area that I'm hopeful for Kirk on this deal on, you know, when we approved this design, you know, I think there's some folks that we need to bring to the table to get their thoughts on the public areas. It's kind of what we just went through recently. There's been some concerns from the public standpoint. There's some private commercial companies that have been having some issues. But I think on a long-term basis, those issues can be resolved with this design. But I think we need to make sure that as they're incorporating that design, they take into consideration some of these concerns that our private sector has when they visit the landfill. So that's a dialogue, and I think I'm trying to set that up with you and with Steve, and hopefully next week we can start that process. And then there's another deal. What do we do in the short term? But we'll be working on that as well.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I think that's exactly the case. I mean, we can't be all things to all people at all times, but we certainly want to try and do what we can to service their needs. I will point out that currently, I think that the City of Moorhead transfer station is certainly an option that may be available to some people if they can't utilize our situation right now. But certainly long-term, that's certainly something that we want to look at, is to try and address as many people's concerns as we can.
I'll move to approve both revisions to the contract.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion by Grant, second by Jim to approve both the revisions. Which one how much money are we looking at here? Is that the 77?
Mr. Chairman, no, and there's some confusion on this, and I apologize. I got this from Matt Evans. It's a total of $61,663 is what it is. It's $28,717 for the final cover design, and then it's $32,946 for the public drop-off design work.
Okay, so just so Colleen will get those figures that they are a little bit different than what we're seeing here.
Right, Mr. Chairman, and you got to sign the contract, so I think you got to be comfortable with it as well.
Mr. Chair, can the final cover, can those funds come out of our closure?
Mr. Chairman, that's a good question. I think that's something we'll look at for sure. I think that's definitely.
I think it'd be worthwhile to check
absolutely.
and see if that qualifies as, because we have, as you all know, we have a certain amount of funds that we have to keep set aside for closure, and final cover to me is part of closure.
Right.
Okay.
One other thing I should point out, and I haven't, and we're still talking about this. One of the other issues that's been really, really significant. Last year we took in about 14,000 tons of alternative daily cover, contaminated soil and things like that. We were only supposed to take in about 7,000 tons, so we had quite a bit that we were storing over, and we had to use it up this year. One of the things that we're going to try and do with the final design of with the relocation of the road is we're going to try and use a little bit more contaminated soil. So hopefully we can try and address some of those issues as well. We've tried to be as creative as we can, but man, I'll tell you, it's just been really, really difficult because you have all kinds of pressures. You have regulatory issues, you have public concerns, and obviously you have political concerns too. I get calls from commissioners on a regular basis. So trying to balance all those things together, it's a challenge, but the most important thing is to maintain the integrity of the landfill and the safety of the facility as much as possible, and we've done a pretty good job, I think, all in all.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Opposed? Okay. And hope, Colleen, you get the updated figures on that. Okay, with that, we're going to interviews for the Buffalo Red River Watershed. We're still looking for one more manager there, and,
They're in the hallway.
yeah.
One's gonna be on phone today.
Okay,
I'm gonna grab them.
probably should do, I don't know, do we wanna, okay.
Will they come one at a time?
No, they come in, they got it, it's open.
Okay.
I mean, I don't care if they all gonna wait out there. Just have a chair in the back there, we'll call you up one by one. Okay, we're going to conduct the interviews for the Watershed District Manager. We got a set of 5 questions that we're going to ask each candidate, and we'll, the order we're going to take is we're just going to go alphabetically. So we're going to start off with Jerry Budenhoff. Sure, just if you appreciate if you talk towards the mic, if you get close enough to that. Okay. Okay. And not that you need to, but you can remove your mask so we can understand you.
Are you sure you want to?
Okay, Gerald, and also to the other candidates, you say we got a list of 5 questions we're going to ask each of you, and then if anybody else has some additional questions they want to ask, we'll do that. But first of all, my first question to you is going to be, what experience would you bring to the Buffalo Red River Watershed District Board of Managers? What type of experience do you have in the watershed?
I'm a farmer. I'm on the township board, been on the township board for probably 26 or 27 years. I should say ex-farmer, I guess I'm semi-retired, but other than that, I live in the bottom of the swamp where the Buffalo River and Whiskey Creek meet, really close to it. So I've got a little bit of experience with water.
Okay. Is there a reason you want to be a watershed manager?
I guess I've got a couple of concerns. I've talked to Bruce on a couple of things I don't like. I don't think the checkbook should be public. I think if people have beaver problems, for instance, I think they should take care of their own beaver problems. I don't think we should be hiring a guy to just systematically march up and down the creek and charge it back to the taxpayers. That, and I guess there's other little things I've talked to Bruce about over the years, but it was all cordial.
Okay. So what is your philosophy on managing drainage?
I think I mean, we've got the ditch systems now, and we've got the buffer strips. As far as retention sites, I think the areas that pay for it, the beneficiaries should be expanded somehow. I don't think it should just go to the downstream landowners necessarily. Because I mean, with the buffer strips that are in place now, the farmers, if they are abiding with the buffer strips as it is, they're basically protected already. And I think for them to pay more taxes for retention sites and stuff like this is wrong. And I don't think the retention sites are wrong, but I think it should be, the beneficiaries should be expanded if there's any way to do it.
Okay. Have you had personal experience with a watershed board in the past? And if yes, was it generally a positive experience, and how would that experience affect your service as a watershed manager?
I had experience with the watershed board many times. Basically, I didn't get what I necessarily wanted, but it was pretty much always a positive experience.
And our final question we've got is, the Clay County Commission has been in support of the diversion project. If appointed to the board, how would you support efforts to achieve completion of this project?
Oh, I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with how things are going with the diversion, but I realize Fargo and Moorhead need protection. But at the same time, I don't think some of the families that are affected upstream are being compensated properly. I think there should be different ways of accomplishing protection for Fargo. What they are, I don't know. I mean, and I haven't been to some of the meetings, or most of the meetings, so I'm not up to speed on all of it and what's going on right now, but that's where I sit.
So right now, your concern is they're not being compensated properly as far as the project itself, or?
Where are some of these little family farms going to go? I mean, they've got land that hasn't been impacted by floods for all their lives, and all of a sudden they're thrown in the middle of a lake. And I don't know if there's if they could shrink the size of the pool. I guess I'm not up to speed on where it's been. I haven't been following it a whole lot, but.
I think that's a valid question though, where, I mean, all of us that understand the ag piece and question that, where, you know, there's only so much land in the Red River Valley that is productive land, and so where do these farms go? I think that's probably the benefit of having presence from someone in the ag community, because you have a wider grasp on it.
I think we've got the tax base for the Barnesville School District and Moorhead School District somewhat. I mean, it changes that. It changes. There's a lot of different impacts, and I, like I said, it's been a long time since I've been in any of these conversations, but at one time, and maybe that's been resolved, there was crop insurance issues with the farmers that are left there, and you know, whether or not they can still, you know, farm the crops they've been farming, you know.
Okay, now those are the 5 questions we have. Do you have anything further to offer that you want to tell us about yourself, or?
No, I guess I am who I am. You know, I've been in public service one way or another for a while.
Okay.
Whether it's good or bad, I mean, people still ask me to do things. Why, I don't know, but.
You must be doing something right. You've been in it for 27 years, so.
Yeah, maybe. So.
Any questions further from the commissioners here? Okay, thank you, Jerry.
Yep, thanks. So I can go home and get about my business?
Yeah, you got some pigs to take care of there or something? Or?
That's Mike.
Tomatoes to pick, but I keep away from mosquitoes.
Okay.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. Mike?
They're next, and we share the same last name, so.
Yeah.
Mike was delivering hogs and lambs this morning.
Oh, Mike is. Oh.
Yep. Yeah,
Excuse
had
me.
to finalize the summer 4-H fair projects that didn't exist.
I see. Okay. Okay, well, you've heard some of the questions, but I'll repeat them again, so you know what we're talking about. What experience would you bring to the Buffalo Red River Watershed District Board of Managers?
As far as serving on boards, haven't done a whole lot, spent 16 years on the Clay County Fair Board. got off, I believe, 16 fairs, I think it was 15 years. Got off 3 years ago to help our daughter more. General experience, born and raised in Clay County. Lived north of town in Oakport Township, rural for, what was it, about 17 years. Now currently reside in Moorhead. So I got a ag background, work in ag sales service, into Wilkin County, Otter Tail County, Becker, Clay, Polk, Norman, into North Dakota. So not necessarily watershed conversations, but being in an ag sales service position, water gets talked about everywhere I go.
Okay,
So it's just general conversation with an ag connection to it.
thank you. And again, the question, why would you want to be a watershed manager?
That's a really good question.
Okay, that's why we're asking it.
It was, I guess it was just brought up to me, a customer I was doing a seed program with, he's having a ditch moved down, he's actually in Wilkin County. And he just said, hey, you'd bring some diversity. You know, you're in ag, you live in town, you live north of town. You know, so he's the one who brought it to my attention, and I got in touch with Jenny and sent an email to somebody else, and here I am. Just, I guess that's where it started, and not doing any civil duties right now. You know, I think some of that is good to give back to your community and take an active role, and at this point I don't have anything on my table like that, so discussed it as a family, and if there's an opportunity, we decided we'd look at it or take the opportunity.
Well, thanks for the interest. And what is your philosophy in managing drainage?
Having not worked directly with drainage, I'm going to go with dealing with drainage, the majority of it being ag-related, and what I do every day in my nutrition and seed business, and trying to get Party A and Party B to work together in agriculture. That can be real interesting. You know, need to come to the best decision for both parties. I've discovered a long time ago that working with my farmer friends that if I've got something I'm trying to coordinate Party A and Party B together with, and they're both upset about the deal, it's probably right. When one guy's happy and the other guy's upset, it's probably not right. Somebody thinks they're winning, somebody thinks they're losing. But if both parties are not completely happy, but hey, we can work through it, and that's where I think water lands. You know, there's never the perfect solution for everybody in the system. I've seen the attitude change. In the country, it used to be, as long as I can dump my stuff and get on with it, there's still probably that attitude in the background. I see, and this is in multiple counties, I see more of the ag producers concerned about the impact of who's next on the line and working together and trying to get a common compromise. When we moved home 19 years ago, man, I'd hear conversations where as long as I got rid of my water, I don't care who it affected. And I've seen a realized change. It's not always going to be perfect. There's going to be conflict, and dealing in agriculture, I guess if you can't handle conflict, it's probably boring.
Okay. Have you had personal experience with a watershed board in the past? And if yes, was it generally a positive experience? And how would that experience affect your service as a watershed manager?
I have not had direct experience with the watershed myself. Nothing personal direct.
Okay. Okay, then the last question. The Clay County Commission has been in support of the diversion project. If appointed to the board, how would you support effects to achieve completion of this project?
Not unlike Jerry, I have paid very little attention to it, probably even less than he has. Sounds like he maybe went to a few meetings once upon a time. I've, was it 2007? Was that the last big flood? You know, I got to deal with sandbagging. We were fortunate water never got to our property, but with the unknown, you know, we lived through that fear. We had a 80-year-old grandma live with us for 2 weeks because she'd been transplanted from the nursing home. But I'd have to look at the facts. I'd have to look at the cost versus the reward, the benefits. Definitely on the, and again, without knowing all the details, but on the payment to the land that would be affected, I view land as, that's a lifetime family, kind of a legacy investment, and a value today versus the value of a lifetime of opportunity. I don't know those numbers, not having studied them, but seeing things where 50 years ago you bought gold or land, you know, just doing the math, the gold is appreciated so much more, but the land, you have that opportunity for income for the rest of your life. So, and I don't know what those offers are, I don't know what the payments are, but that would be something I'd need to gather more information on.
Okay.
Protecting the city and the heartbeat of the area, I see that side of it also, but I haven't been to the meetings and don't know all the details.
All right, those are our 5 questions. Did you have something to add, you'd like to add to them?
I guess at this point, I think that summarizes it, and
Okay.
would be willing to participate if so asked.
What about the commissioners here? You got any further questions for them? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Joel, are you on the phone right now? Probably not. I don't see that green light on anymore. Mr. Hillebrand, are you on the phone? Joel, are you on the phone right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Joel. I don't know if you've been listening to our questions or not, but we've got a list of 5 questions we'd like to ask you, and if you're ready for that.
Yes, I am.
Okay, Joel. My first question is, what experience would you bring to the Buffalo Red River Watershed District Board of Managers?
I am a current member of the Clay FWCD, have been for 8 years. I am a former member of the Grant County FWCD and a former member of the Joint Powers Board for on the Pomme de Terre, on the Pomme de Terre River. So that would be my official experience that I could bring to the board.
Oh, okay. And why would you want to be a watershed manager?
It's something that my dad instilled into me many years ago. Conservation. I've been following what you do on a general level for the years that I've been on the Clay board. Assisting landowners and farmers with conservation practices and I feel with my experience that I can bring something positive to the board.
Okay. What is your philosophy on managing drainage?
My philosophy, could you repeat the question, please?
What is your philosophy on managing drainage?
You need to take philosophy on, you need to be able to measure the cause and effect of drainage. So you want to drain something to build a shopping center. Okay, can you build a shopping center someplace else? Or if you can't, you may have to, or we will make you mitigate the drainage that you, the wetland that you will disturb. As far as farm drainage, you can't just think about you need to think about everybody else that what effect you changing drainage might have on your neighbors and the people in your sub-watershed.
Okay. Next question I've got. Have you had personal experience with the watershed board in the past? If yes, was it generally a positive experience? And how would that experience affect your service as a watershed manager?
I have not had any direct dealings with the Buffalo Red Watershed District other than as a partner, working with them with the Clay FWCD.
Okay. And the last question is, the Clay County Commission has been in support of the diversion project. If appointed to the board, how would you support efforts to achieve completion of this project?
I hadn't anticipated that.
Well, I guess our question is just, do you support the project, or are you against the project, or?
I am neither, honestly, I'm neither for nor against. I realize that, Fargo is looking for some protection. Morgan and Clay County is also looking for some protection. I am a landowner that would, in North Dakota, that would be inside the diversion if it was built. I'm aware that there's been a lot of heartburn on both sides of the river, concerning planning and water storage. I am not a big proponent, nor am I a big opponent. I would just, if I was on the board, I wouldn't have any position on that unless it affected something that we were trying to do as affecting the watershed. I hadn't anticipated this question.
Okay. Well, those are the 5 questions we've got. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, yes, but just a brief statement. I know that there's a finite amount of money and there's a finite amount of resources, and I believe that 10, 11 years of combined watershed supervisor work that I've done and being a past member of the Joint Powers Board, that I can show good fiscal reasoning behind doing this practice or following this practice or not allowing this practice. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Any commissioners got any questions for him? Okay, if not, thank you so much, Joel, for taking the time to talk to us.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. And with that, I would say you're Jerry. Jerry Chanson?
Yes.
Okay. You probably got your answers all ready to go now, huh? No, thank you for
Short
taking
memory.
Thank you for taking the time to be with us. Again, I'll go through the 5 questions. The first one is, what experience did you bring to the Buffalo Red River Watershed District Board of Managers?
Lifelong farmer, northeast of Barnesville, would live on Stony Creek. Also have land that sheds into the Whiskey Creek. Several water projects. We've built diversion dikes, water retention dikes to control runoff and sediment, and they've been most effective actually to eliminate erosion. And some tile projects, and so I would say we have a fair amount of water experience. And I also have land by Downer that seems to be the bottom of the barrel, so working with neighbors and getting everybody to agree on how to move water effectively, I think is important.
Jerry, can you talk into your microphone?
Sure.
There we go, thanks.
Okay. So the next question would be, why would you want to be a watershed manager?
I guess I was concerned that we could have the wrong person in that position, and whether I'm the right one or not, that's your decision, but I think I can offer lifelong experience on water issues and hopefully getting along with neighbors and getting people to agree on things.
Okay. And you've talked a little bit about drainage, but what is your philosophy on drainage?
Well, if we can control it and control sediment and control erosion, we're much better off than letting it go unabated and sending our soil to Grand Forks in Canada. It's just, if we can do something, we should do something.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think what we've done on our own farm is proof of what can be done, and some of that has been in cooperation with the Watershed Board and Clay County Soil Conservation and NRCS.
Okay, it looks like you've done some tiling and stuff and drainage and stuff, but have you had personal experience with the Watershed Board in the past?
Absolutely.
And if yes, was it generally a positive experience? And how would that experience affect your service as a watershed manager?
The experiences have generally been positive. Their input on our projects has been exceptional. There again, through NRCS and the cooperation of Watershed, we've been able to eliminate a lot of erosion, and that's got to be high on the, and also slowing down the water flow has to help the flooding situation for Fargo-Moorhead, so.
Okay. Then our final question is, the Clay County Commission has been in support of the diversion project. If appointed to the board, how would you support efforts to achieve completion of this project?
Well, Moorhead and Fargo are the economic hub of the region here, and we obviously we need to do something to reduce the flooding problems, and so we have to do something. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know the details of the current plan that's on the table. I know very little, but I can learn.
Okay. Is there something further you'd like to offer about your background, experiences and stuff there?
Born and raised in Clay County, born next door here, I guess. And,
okay.
Attended NDSU and lifelong farmer. For another week, I do have property in Fargo, I guess, but it's sold theoretically, and I think my lifelong experiences would offer a practical, common sense approach to handling some of these issues.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners?
I have a question. You just mentioned that you're selling property in North Dakota. Is it related to the FM diversion project?
It is not. I had two kids going to NDSU, and I bought a house. Oh. And then now there happens to be some farmland for sale, so we're getting rid of the house and hopefully investing in some farmland. And the house was never in a flood plain, or not an issue, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Jerry, thank you so much for your interest. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
So you've never followed the diversion project?
I really haven't. We're 240 feet above Fargo, and other than a cursory glance at the whole project, I haven't spent the time to really study what is involved. I maybe should have studied ahead of this interview just so I knew something, but I apologize. I would need to really catch up.
Okay, well, any
If
further
you're-
questions?
So, as the original question stated, this county board has been supportive of this for a number of years. And obviously the current watershed board is in a legal challenge against us. And they're spending large portions of Clay County taxpayer dollars to fight something that our county board has been trying to have implemented. And, you know, it seems to me that, and for, you know, for that matter, some of them have not been interested in even wanting to having a seat at the table to be able to discuss the project with the diversion authority.
Isn't that where it has to start, is having a seat at the table and discussing it?
Well, I would certainly think so.
I mean, that just seems.
But the group
where it
that's
has to
there, they voted to not even, they had an opportunity to be part of the diversion authority, a voting member on there, and they declined. I guess.
And there again, I since I don't know all the details of the current plan, I can't guarantee that I would agree with one side or another, but I would certainly look at it objectively, and I would hope everybody could sit down at the same table and come to some kind of agreement. I mean, that's in everybody's interest to come to some agreement, and hopefully everybody ends up ahead, so.
Okay. Well, Jerry, thank you for your interest in applying for this, and we'll be making the decision on this and let you know.
Well, thank you for taking the time.
Okay, we've heard the 4 candidates. Do we make the decision today? Is that the agenda? We make decision?
Mr. Chair, it's up to this board if they want to make that decision today, have discussion, or if you want to take it under consideration to next week's board meeting.
I don't know if you guys need more time to make a decision or not. What are you want to take more time to do it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be here next week, but you know, I don't know when it needs to be done. But I'm always still concerned, you know, about, you know, and from my perspective, the Diversion Authority is a major public safety project for the region, and so I'm still a little dismayed that all the candidates seem to, you know, be non-committal or not informed on the issue, so I'm not sure I'm ready to appoint anybody at this point, so.
I agree with Commissioner Whalen.
I do too. I'm kind of really
Okay.
at a loss.
I'll just wait a brief moment for Jenny to come back, get her opinion. Okay, Jenny, we're discussing whether to appoint someone today or to move it to next week. Grant and Jim and Kevin sort of felt we want to move it on a little till next week.
Well, the agenda says conduct interviews for the Buffalo Red Watershed Manager. It doesn't say appoint.
Very good, we'll go with that. Okay, interviews are done, we'll put that on the agenda for next week, possibly for appointment. Okay, with that, we'll go into,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I do want to state, though, that Commissioner Whalen said he may not be here next week. I think a vote of this magnitude, we should have all 5 members present to
Could he call in?
be voting
Is
on
that
this.
available or not?
Maybe.
probably put it the first thing on the agenda next week.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move that to next week then. We'll go into committee reports. Kevin, you want to start us out today?
Okay, yes, I can. Had a busy week. Trying to keep it as short as I can here. Last Tuesday, we did have a dispatch meeting, but we went over some concerns, and I think we're looking at setting up a time to discuss that more with some of our local entities to see how we can address concerns from this side of the river. I had a short meeting with Joel Paulson just to go over some of the items related to the FM diversion that same day. On Wednesday, I had a Prairie Lakes meeting in the morning, and we did approve a preliminary budget that would raise the tipping fee there from $129 to $135 per ton. But because of the adjustment from going from 56,000 ton process projection to 54,000 ton, it changed the calculation, which actually reduces Clay County's cost for the year 2021 by $21,767.50. So that was the primary thing that took place. And we continue to have some discussions regarding the insurance. It's a big topic. Right now, we went from what was in 2019 $70-some thousand a year premiums to $470. So we're still fighting with MCIT to come up with a solution. Then that same day, then I did have a public outreach meeting for the Diversion Authority. They did show us videos. There's some real construction going on with both those control structures on the Wild Rice rivers, and let's see if there's anything else in there. That's probably, then the land management meeting. We did get some additional reports and updates. We got a Phase 1B presentation on the flowage easement study. Crown Appraisals is really involved with that. And they're kind of narrowing down what that, based on the impacts, what the price per acre valuation should be for the flowage easements. Then on Thursday morning, we had the solid waste advisory meeting, and again, we addressed the items, the main topics that were done. We do want to note that Morehead's plan for cleanup week for the 14th has been canceled this year, so there will not be a cleanup week, but they will have the transfer station open that week, I think, for free deliveries. Then yesterday morning, I had a Diversion Authority Chair's executive meeting going over a number of things, including timelines for the contested case. And by the way, as we speak, the contested case was opened back up today for additional testimony in regards to PRAM 5, which is the property management, or the property mitigation plan. So I think there were two written testimonials given by members of the DNR, and I think today there's testimony and cross-examination of Eric Dodds and Greg Thielman that's going on today. And then it's my understanding after that, it's a one-day only deal before the administrative law judge. And then the testimony will be closed, and then the final documents will be written, and then it'll be up to her to make her decision, I guess. Then yesterday afternoon we had or yesterday morning, whatever it was, we had a coronavirus meeting, task force meeting. I get confused. It wasn't yesterday morning, I guess. And we acted on several of those things today, so I don't need to report any further on that. So that concludes my report.
Okay, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Wednesday, August 26th, I attended the virtual meeting of the FM Diversion Finance Committee, and we heard reports from several of the stakeholders. And the big one was we heard the results of a 3-year audit by Eide Bailly as part of the accelerated closing of the WIFIA loan, and the audit showed as clear, meaning there were no issues with the diversion authority financially, according to Eide Bailly. And that is my report.
Let's see, we had a dispatch meeting last week with the sheriff and Warren Police Chief about some issues some of the smaller communities are having, and we're going to be working on that and meeting with the mayors from around the county. I had the Joint Powers, more Clay Joint Powers meeting Kevin already discussed. And let's see, I had Diversion Authority meeting and a executive session or closed session on some legal issues that are going on. And then we had an update by the executive director and just general information. That was it for me.
Okay, thank you. Jenny?
Thank you. Last week, I attended the CARES Act Committee on the 27th. We had a CARES Act Committee on the 31st. We're really working hard on those different categories. As you know, today we brought some major issues that we've identified to you. There are some more conversations that will be coming this way, but I continue to encourage you to reach out to anyone in your networks. Those dollars are meant to really help, especially the small business pieces. And so if there are folks in your communities that you're hearing from having difficulty, make sure and forward those questions on, as the deadline now is less than a week. So I had those 2 meetings. And as you probably noted, the committee is continuing to meet 2 to 3 times a week, and we're whittling away at that. One issue that has come up out of that is that there are some meetings that I've been unable to attend because of commitments with the CARES Act, and Commissioner Campbell and I both talked a little bit about this, but if this board would be willing to add the watershed liaison alternates to committee assignments, I think that would be probably something that would be important. There's a lot going on with the One Watershed, One Plan issues. As you know, the ditch issues that continue to go on, but I may entertain that thought for this board if we could add to your portfolios both the Wild Rice Watershed District and the Buffalo Red Watershed District as alternates. I know that Frank is the main for Wild Rice.
I think what she's asking for is that all of us who are not the actual voting member, that any one of us can serve as the alternate. I think that's,
as needed.
As needed, yeah.
Yes.
I would move that we change those designations for alternates to be all county board members. Other than the actual appointed delegate.
Well, are we saying then we could all 5 go to the meeting?
No.
Well, so.
Or how many should be at the meeting?
Right, I don't necessarily mean that. So for instance, I am the planning commission delegate and all 4 of you are the alternate on that. And so if the voting member cannot make it to a meeting, then it's the option of the others that could serve as an alternate. If it is a public meeting, you could, I mean, there have been times that several of us have been at meetings, but those have been public meetings. And so you'd have to continue to abide by those rules, but just because, as all of you know, all of our committee assignments have grown substantially in the last year or two, and specifically with COVID, the COVID issue, we're meeting more, and there are just meetings that we can't maybe make it to.
I think whoever, you know, for in this example, you're the voting member for the Wild Rice Watershed District, and Commissioner Mojo is for the Buffalo Red. And in the event that you would not be able to go, then you would kind of reach out and you could start with whoever you wanted on the board and see if they're able to go. And if they're able to go, you can stop right there. You don't have to even go.
So we're just looking at one person to attend the meeting.
That's right. We just want to make sure that somebody is there to represent a vote on behalf of Clay County.
Okay.
So that.
Okay, we've got a motion that we appoint all of us as alternates to the Wild Rice and to the Buffalo. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, we've got a second to that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes my reports.
Okay, my meetings, last Tuesday I went to Hit It All, where Gabe was up there giving some information on the CARES Act. First of all, I'd really like to thank Gabe or compliment Gabe on a wonderful, I mean, not wonderful is the right word, a great presentation on telling those people or giving them the information that's needed to apply for this stuff. And we've had people there from the city that Hit It All, Gooseberry Township, Highland Grove Township. So it was a good meeting to give them information. And I hope you get some more information from townships and stuff like that. But I don't know how many more meetings like that he's holding, but I would say that was a very beneficial meeting. There was good information given there. Wednesday, the Buffalo Watershed Board had a policy committee meeting on the One Watershed, One Plan. And that was a virtual meeting that I attended there. And we just approved the plan and set up a date for a public hearing on it. And Wednesday afternoon, Metrocog Transportation gave an update on the transportation plans for the area, and I attended that also. That was also a virtual meeting, so. Okay, those were my meetings. Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could just follow up on your comments on Gabe. We did in our committee have that discussion. We did have a number of townships from our board meeting last week that did certify for their dollars, but we still have 13 townships that make up about $117,000 that we still have not had townships certify. And so Gabe has agreed to reach out as part of our committee an additional time to try to get townships to consider certifying prior to the September 15th deadline. So, last Tuesday, I participated in the dispatch discussion that Commissioner Campbell and Whalen have touched on. Last week, I had multiple conversations with Lori Johnson and Darren on the budget process. A series of meetings with Brian Melton on different legal issues throughout the county. Participated in the Corona relief meetings, both on the 27th and the 31st. On the 27th, I also participated in the SWAC meeting that Commissioner Campbell has addressed. That afternoon, I participated in the MCCJPA meeting. Commissioner Whalen attended, and also participated in county management that afternoon, where we covered CARES issues and budget discussion. And I think that concludes my report.
Okay. With that, we're going to go into closed session, and I'll take a motion to go into closed session.
Second the motion.
Okay, got a motion by Grant, second by Cheney to go into closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're back in session.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would like to move that due to the COVID pandemic and the concerns with the weather conditions and those things associated with our current DMV facility, that we authorize our county administrator to research the potential for expansion or relocation options available to us for that facility.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we've got a motion by Kevin, second by Jenny to possibly look at different things for the motor vehicle. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else we need to do today? We're adjourned.